It's the CBT Nugget series for 70-413, Designing and Implementing Server Infrastructure. I'm Chris Ward, and this nugget, we dig just a little bit deeper into the Virtual Machine Manager by taking a look at both service templates and your logical networks. You might think in this series that we're spending a lot of time on the Virtual Machine Manager, and there's a good reason, because guess what? Microsoft really likes it, and they want you to be able to understand this going into the 70-413. VMM application, we've already installed it. Now we're going to take a look at it a little bit more detail, including how to create a service template and what that means versus a standard template. Remember, a service template is not just about the hardware that you're going to be using, it's also what type of apps you want to run and everything else. We're going to do that, and we'll take a quick look at the network fabric. What are the logical networks, and what does that do for us when we're creating these virtual machines? So here I am with a brand new clean installation of Virtual Machine Manager. Of course, I'm using the evaluation version, and I recommend it if you guys want to practice with this and utilize this. This is a really great tool to utilize, and you're going to see that I love this. Microsoft has gone so ribbon happy. You know, take a look at this. We've got the ribbon in place, which is, you know, kind of cool. But anyway, so that's our Virtual Machine Manager, and so we're going to take a look at some of the things that you can do with this, and it's important that we're familiar with some of the things. But you can see that on the basic, you have a couple of tabs here. You got your VM services, or VMs and services. You have your fabric, which is everything behind the scenes, all the host type of information and the host things like your networks and your processors and your things like that. And then, of course, you've got your library, which we're going to take a look at here in just a second, because this is where we're going to create our service templates. You have jobs that can run. That can be anything from updating your service templates to updating your libraries and things like that. And then settings. This is where you're going to do some of your security settings and some other things that you can do. Up here on the top, you can see when I'm on my VMs and services, there's a couple of things. I can create a service. That could be something like a web service or an application service. You can create virtual machines, or if you click on this down arrow, it'll allow you to convert a virtual machine if you need to. You can create a cloud. I don't have any hosts created yet, so I can't create a host group, or I haven't added a host, I should say, to the VMM. And then, of course, you will eventually want to create a VM network, because otherwise it's kind of hard for your virtual machines to communicate, right? You kind of need that. And then, of course, we don't have any clouds available, so we can't assign it to any cloud environment. You've got an overview. You got your VMs and services that are in play, that it can play, and then, of course, any existing VM networks, which I don't have. Now, the tenant filter, a lot of times this is confusing for people who haven't used VMM before. Tenants, basically think about them as almost self-service users, and what you can do now that we have System Center 2012, and I think it started in Service Pack 1, you can create a tenant administrator user role. And so that way you can create and manage the self-service users and the VM networks. You can manage your own virtual machines by using a VMM console or web portal, or you can specify which tasks the self-users can perform on virtual machines and services. And what I love about it, you can place quotas on the computing resources in virtual machines. Remember how I was saying that, you know, I've got Jake here, who's my link guy, right? So I got my link administrator, and Jake, of course, loves creating link. And so let's say he's like, I want to create 20 link environments. And we're like, no, Jake, you can only create 3. And so what you can do is you can add points, or, you know, we'll actually see this a little bit later when we create the template, where a link front-end server, okay, is 1 point. And let's say the edge server is 1 point, and your mediation server is 1 point, and then we would do maybe a persistent chat is 1 point. And so that is our link environment. Well, how many points is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 points. Let's say that we want to let Jake at least be able to, on his own, without any help from us, create 2 link environments. So how many points do we have to give him? We say your quota is 8. That's your quota. And so that we can use something like that for that. So that's basically what's going on. Obviously, you can open up a PowerShell window. You can open up any currently running jobs, and the pro tips, which are like, hey, let me show you how you can do this a little better if you want. So just a little description of that environment. Now, Obviously, we have a couple of other things that we can do here. We have, of course, our fabric, which is going to be our servers that we're running, our VMM server. It's responding. It has library, and it is a VMM server. I can obviously remote into this with the VMM console, and it would tell me all available ones that we have here. We've got networking. So this is where I can create those logical networks, MAC address pools. If you have any load balancers in play, you can do that. By the way, if I can also do this just by selecting down here. And obviously the one network load balancing they have in play is Microsoft's NLB. So it's active. You can have what a lot of people call, is this the very important person? No, this is the virtual IP templates that you can do. Logical switches, port profiles, if you need those. You can do things like a low bandwidth adapter. If you're using live migration, what do you need in place? iSCSI, all those kind of things. You got your this is your SRIOV, where it basically can help bypass your virtual networks and that. Load balancers, okay, which is kind of cool. Then here's your NIC profile. You can do that. Port classifications as well. If you're going to be used for host management traffic, you can pick these up. And then, of course, any network services that you want to place. Storage is also right here. You can do classifications and pools, and you can obviously change providers, any arrays that you have, any file servers that are out there, any fiber channel fabrics that you need to hook up to, would all be placed into here. Then, of course, there is the library. Now, the library is, of course, where we can create something. Now, I went ahead and kind of was playing around and creating a new service template. Notice it needs attention. Why? Because I haven't added a virtual network yet, and so I would need to fix that before it works. But I'll show you how that works. You also have your standard VM templates, which are just basically your hardware templates or your base templates. Remember, that can just change the hardware. It doesn't allow you to add the operating systems and the applications and the different roles and features, which is what we really want to be able to do. Then, of course, we've also talked about profiles, which are important. You've got your application profiles. You have your capability profiles. Now, we've already got 3 built in by default. You have your Zen server. This would be a capability profile, which means your template needs to be able to run in a Zen server or a Citrix environment, or in a Hyper-V environment, or in a VMware's ESX server, which is basically vSphere. That you can work on that. You can also do guest OS profiles. Here's where our hardware profiles can be built, saying you need at least this much memory, this many processors, and your I/O on your storage needs to be XYZ. The physical computer that this is running on can be a certain thing. And then, of course, SQL Server profiles if you want to set that up as well. Then you've got equivalent objects. Now, equivalent objects is kind of cool. Equivalent objects are basically a way for you to group library resources that are considered, guess what, equivalent. So think about this. Maybe you have a, let's say I have my Windows Server 2012 R2 virtual disk, and it's on a library share here in Phoenix. And then you also have, though, a Windows Server 2012 R2 virtual disk that's in Eugene, okay? And so what happens is that in a template or profile, you'll point to a specific virtual disk on a specific library share, and then what happens is VMM can substitute an equivalent during virtual machine or service creation. So basically, you can author templates or profiles that are not dependent on a particular physical resource. In other words, if Jake's out there in Eugene and he's got a very good Windows Server 2012 R2 virtual hard drive based or virtual disk in place, VMM will go, hey, this is local. I'll just use this one. And so it's equivalent. In other words, I say, as long as it's the same and it matches this, I can go ahead and do that. Well, obviously, that will need to be placed in the library so that VMM is aware of that in both places. Make sense, right? Then, of course, you've got your cloud libraries, which is kind of fun. Self-service user content. This will be what your tenants can use, your self-service objects. Obviously. You got library servers that are going to be out there. Now, the cool thing about library servers is that you have resources that are pre-built in. You've got blank, small I like this, virtual hard disks and large virtual hard disks. By the way, you have Gen 1 VHDs and VHDXs available to you, and you can then select these, and which is kind of cool. And this will tell you that this can be used as a base drive to create a new virtual machine or as an additional data drive. Oh, that's kind of cool. That'd be kind of cool. Now notice there is no operating system on this. That'd be cool. What if I have one that already has an operating system on there? Yeah, that'd be cool. Notice this is Microsoft Hyper-V, so you can do that. Then, of course, you have your Web Deploy x64, which is an application framework resources for x84. It's a web deployment tool. Then you have your Server App V that you can use, which is, this is application virtualization. Same thing, and it tells you where this is located, which is kind of fun. And so these are just some things that are in the library. Then you have your jobs. Jobs are kind of cool. These tell you any of the jobs that have run. Now take a look at this. I've run quite a few jobs already. I started off by updating the library, then I created a new service, I modified it, I tested the service template, it worked, I resolved the service template because obviously I want to make sure that I when I do my demo that it actually worked. Hey, come on, behind the scenes magic that's going on. So, and then you can see any current running jobs. Well, there are no current running jobs there. Settings, last little bit. Again, this is where you can create those user roles that we were talking about and any run as accounts. So if you need a run as account like a local service with NT authority, boom, right there. You need a system account that runs like a system. You can add this. That's so cool. So these are already pre-built. You can obviously create new ones. You can create user role, create run as user account. You would then describe it. You would create the username and then what the password would be to validate against the domain credential. So that's how you would do that. And then you can even view the script that would run in PowerShell that would do that. Do you want to continue? Yes, I don't want to create a new one. So you got servicing Windows System Center settings if you're going to integrate any of the other System Center capabilities and console add-ins, all beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here in our basic setup. But let's go back because one of the two things I want to show you, one is how to set up that service template, right? So if I come back here to the library and I want to create the service template like I just did, I go ahead and select Create Service Template, and what it does is it opens up your Virtual Machine Manager Service Template Designer. Now you have some templates already used in here. You have a blank, which means you create it just from scratch, nothing. You have a single machine, so you have a single computer tier. You can do 2 tiers applications, so basically if you're running maybe in one application and another in that environment, you can also do a 3-tier, or you can go to blank and then add whatever it is. So let's go ahead and just do a single machine, because it's fun just to do the wizard. So we go ahead and we click OK. It saves the template, it adds the template, and then notice something. It says, uh-oh, there's some problems. So if I select on this, it tells you what the problem is. It says that you need at least 1 virtual hard disk, and you need at least 1 virtual machine network present in the template, and then try again. Okay, so you can do that. So what you can do is obviously when you come on here, and you double click on the single tier here, it's going to go ahead and come in and open this up. And let me get this down here. I've got my screen at the maximum here, which is fine, and that way we'll go ahead and just put this in. We'll call this link server front end. Okay, computer, and we'll just say this helps get link up and running. Okay. Now you can prevent this machine from being automatically migrated. You can also scale it out for doing that and how many times, and you can even create an availability set for the tier. So the next thing that we want to do is come over here to hardware configuration. Now this is where we can use the compatibility. Okay, right now we have a cloud capability profile attached to this, but I can then validate against a different one. In this case, I want to run this in a Hyper-V environment. Now check this out. As soon as I selected that, it pre-populated some of the hardware configuration that I have here, because obviously to run on Hyper-V you need at least 1 processor, 512 megs of memory. Why, that's a little bit, and then all the other things. Now the cool thing is I can obviously change these. In the case if I'm running link, I'm going to run this up, and I'll just say that'll be 4096. Okay, 4 gigs of memory there. We don't need a floppy drive, comms, but then on the video adapter, check this out. You have the standard video adapter, which is obviously just, it's standard. You can use a Microsoft Remote FX 3D video adapter, especially if you're going to be running this remotely. This works really well. But notice I have no hard drives attached, right? So I need to add this, 0 devices attached. So you come up here, click on New, and we're going to use a disk, okay? So it'll say, all right, we're going to use a new virtual hard disk. You can use what channel you're going to use. You can change that. Primary channel 1, or in this case, the primary channel 0 is now being in use. You can use an existing virtual hard disk if you had it, and browse for that through your library. You can create a new virtual hard disk, or in this case, we'll just go ahead and pass it through to the physical drive on the host. It will contain the operating system for the virtual machine, obviously important, and you can create a differencing disk using the specified disk as a parent. And then, by the way, if you can do this, this is either local, or you can say, I've got remote storage set up. So either one, go ahead and do that. And then we come down here to the network adapter, and it's going to say, all right, we are not connected. By the way, this is a legacy network adapter. If I wanted a regular one, I just click on New. Oop. There we go. New, and just do a standard network adapter if you want to do that. So in this case, you can say it's going to be connected to a VM network. We don't have one set up. You'd have to browse for that. Dynamic IP, obviously, if you want to pull its IP address from a DHCP server, or static IP if you've created a static IP pool. Okay, MAC address can be dynamic or static if you want to hard code it, and then port profiles with different classifications and all that. Now there's some more advanced things that you can do here. Memory weight, virtual NUMA. Memory weight obviously says how much memory do you get access to in that environment, and it obviously prioritizes the virtual machine over other virtual machines, things like that. Availability, you can say make this virtual machine highly available, and then you can then set the priority, high, medium, or low, and you can do that all the way. Okay, so that's good. But now how about the operating system? This is cool. You can come in and do your operating system, 64-bit edition of Windows Server 2008 R2. Let's go up to 2012 Data Center. You can do an identity. What is the name of the computer? Asterisk, it randomly generates one. What's the administrator password on the local? We won't require that up front. Then later on, you can do a run as. Product key, that's obviously important. You can put that in and pre-build it. And then here's those roles and features. This is where in that operating system, we're going to go ahead and say we want Active Directory, not that one, we'll do, here we go, domain ADDS, because we want this to be a domain controller. And let's say what else we want in here. We're going to want file and storage services. We're going to want to make this a DNS server, obviously, with a domain controller. That's cool. Come down here and you can do just all kinds of different things. Maybe I want to do make this a web server with FTP with management services. Okay, you can do that. And then, cool this, here's the features. And then here's where we can add the appropriate features that we want, and you name it, we've got it. All the things, and think about this is Server Manager. And when you manage your roles, right, and you click on it and you get all this stuff. So you can go ahead and add these. Do you want to join it to a domain or work group? In this case, we'll just leave it on a work group. If you did a domain, you can specify the credentials or a run as account. And then here's our answer file, which is cool. So you can attach a sysprep INF file or an unattend XML file for the older versions there to the guest OS profile. And then the GUI run once command. So the first time somebody logs in, they type the command in the following box, and then that's what it's going to run. So that could maybe go out and pull a user profile or do something like that. Then you have, of course, your application configuration. Here's the scripts and applications that can then be run, that you can then join in. Just depending on what you want to do, the scripts that can run, and so these are just different things that you can obviously application profiles you can set up right here. None, do not install any applications. Whatever you want to do. The OS compatibility, make sure that it runs with Windows Server 2012. If you have SQL Server configuration, you can do this as well. Any custom properties you can add. Settings. This is where, remember, we were talking about self-service. This is where if I say this is a link front end and I want to give it one quota point, Talked about that. Dependencies. There's no dependencies necessary in any validation. We go ahead and we click on OK, and it's going to go out and create and save this particular service template. Now again, it's going to have to go out and think a little bit about this, about what has been happening. But if you notice, and there we go, and thinks about that and says, okay, we have this. But what was the one thing that we really needed to be able to do? We needed that virtual network, right? That logical network. So what we need to do is come on out here. And by the way, we can see, obviously, with our library servers and everything that we have here, we can come up here and then click on service templates, and now you can see we have two service templates. Now, we still need attention. Why? Because the virtual network is not in place. Now, to do that, we go over here to Fabric, and we can come on up here on our networking, right? So if we come over here to networking, we click on it, we can create a logical network, which is the network topology, and you come in here and say we want one connected network. Do we want to allow new VM networks on this logical network? Do you want to use VLAN-based networks? And then basically what this is creating, and we'll just call this test. We'll go ahead and just do one connected network, and this is where you add sites. And remember, sites are going to be your subnets, right? And so you enter IP subnets. Notice you have to use CIDR, or classless interdomain routing, a notation. So it's 192.168.1.0/24, or some people call them /networks. And you, of course, if you like IP version 6, that's available to you as well. And so essentially this is where we come in and we click on add, and you would say, all right, all host groups can use this network site, and then we would insert the appropriate VLANs with the IP subnets for that to then to be able to be selected. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out this because I don't have it set up here. Yes, I know I didn't add that, but that's basically what we need to do to add a service template. You need to know that for the small lit room, as well as how do we get our networks up and running, our logical networks. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for joining me.